2016, the election is in full gear, where people are dropping out. We've had Walker dropped out. We had Perry drop out. What's your thought on, I guess, give me some of your general thoughts on the GOP field for 2016.
Well, during the first GOP debate, Carly Fiorina was at the kids' table, and I have a feeling, I had David Bender, the political director from the Progressive Voices Network, come on my show, and we discussed his take on that first debate. And he said, well, I want you to listen to what the spin is and what they're talking about. Right? So there was that entire debate, all sort of, show and Trump and Bush and all of that. And meanwhile, what the media was talking about the next day is Carly Fiorina and how well she did at the kids' table debate. And then lo and behold, she's at the adults' table debate the next time. And now she is just below Donald Trump, who everyone just assumes is going to drop out in New Hampshire. So my feeling is that the Republican Party has its favorites, and they will do what needs to be done to put those favorites forward, and that Carly Fiorina is one of those favorites. And the fact that she could go on that second debate and completely lie about the Planned Parenthood issue, about babies being disemboweled, and sold for parts while there's a full-on fetus, on the table, and her talking about that and having that not be true at all and not be a Planned Parenthood video, none of that what she said was true. The fact that she could stand there and just so blatantly lie with such force and conviction makes her a very good candidate for the GOP.
You got to be a good liar if you want to be get the Republican nomination. Absolutely. Well, what's interesting though about Fiorina, and I think just if you didn't know she was lying out of her teeth and completely full of it, she definitely did well presentation-wise in that second debate. But What's interesting though is I hear people talking about Fiorina. I'm not 100% convinced that the GOP base will vote for a woman. I think they'd be fine with a woman as vice president, but I also another reason I don't think they necessarily would vote for Ben Carson either. I think there's also some major sexism and racism hurdles that the base would have to get to. They'll have them there to be like, oh yeah, look, see, we have a woman on stage, or hey, look, we have a black friend, and so it's they have those two things. But I really don't think that when it comes down to when all these individual states have to vote, I don't see Republicans voting for Ben Carson, and I also don't see them voting for Carly Fiorina. If they got the nomination, that'd be one. Got to the national, that'd be one thing. But just to win those individual states, I'm not sure they go that way.
Yeah, I think you have a good point there, and I hate to be so I don't know. I just don't trust them at all. I believe that they created Carly Fiorina out of nowhere. There are a number of business executives. Carly Fiorina has been appearing on Meet the Press for the past few years. They created her, right? They made her into something. They groomed her. She is not an office holder. She is a former executive that cut thousands of jobs at IBM and laid off a whole bunch of people. And that, I guess, to the GOP is an excellent thing. And they had her on Meet the Press constantly. They basically created her as, I believe, a foil to Hillary Clinton, because if she was not running, there would be so much talk about how the GOP is all white men and Ben Carson, or all men, right?
Yeah.
But she's in there. She's not an elected official. The elected, the elected representatives who could have run are people who are bad. Can we swear on your program? Who are, a little off their rockers. There's Sarah Palin. There's Michelle Bachmann. There's that lady Joni Ernst with the pig disemboweling. These people are not going to play well to a national audience. Carly Fiorina, as you said, plays well. She does very well. She's very well spoken. She was in business. You can see how she's a tough cookie. And I just think they have her in there to tamp down the Democrats' ability and women's rights activists' ability, or just women, to say they don't even have a woman. Just like Ben Carson is a token.
If you're a gambling woman, I don't know if you are or not, Juliana, who do you think takes the nomination?
I think Bush.
Bush still
take the nomination. Yeah.
You know, it's weird. Like that was I thought it was going to be Bush or Walker. Now I still get a feeling it might be Trump. It's so weird.
That would be really exciting. I mean, Trump. I'm sorry, I'm terrified because Trump is a crazy person. First of all, I hate to keep throwing that word around. He's insane in a different way than some of the other uses of the word I've been using. But he actually said that he thinks NAFTA was a terrible idea and that he would use trade policy to make sure we keep jobs in this country. Well, I like that idea. I don't know if he would actually do it. Corporate America would not support him in that, or corporate, global corporations would not support him in that. I'd like to hear, Bernie Sanders is against the TPP. He's talking about the same thing. So when he said that, it's not like I'm switching my vote to Trump anytime soon or anytime ever, but he is kind of going off the Republican talking points. He's not on the leash. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, both NAFTA and TPP are bipartisan disasters. They're like, that is, the TPP is Obama's baby, and that's, the horrible thing that that just got agreed to is that's Obama, and just like NAFTA, that was Clinton, that was Bill Clinton. So, this is bipartisan corporate horrors when it comes to actually taking care of voters.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant in terms of Bernie Sanders kind of running outside of the normal rhetoric of the Democratic Party, and by saying he's against the TPP and trade policies that are unfair and that would undercut our ability to have health care, to get drugs, accessible to people who are sick, and to our environment and jobs and all of that stuff that would be affected negatively by these trade policies. He is sort of talking outside of the normal Democratic rhetoric, and Donald Trump is definitely talking outside of. I mean, when's the last time you heard any politician on the right say anything anti-free trade?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever have in my life, ever.
No, it's like this idea, and I've talked about this on the show a little bit before, is just how it's interesting because like Trump is running a populist campaign. It's right-wing populism, which is actually very, scary, right? So he's like tapping into people's legitimate feelings that our country's messed up. People know it's rigged. People know it's wrong. And so Trump is taking that, and with that energy of people being upset, he's talking about, deporting 15 million immigrants. It's like doing like an ethnic cleansing. That's what he wants to do with this populism, where Bernie wants to raise the minimum wage, hold Wall Street accountable. He wants to, make college free. So it's like
address climate change.
Yeah, climate change. So it's really like it really is. A lot of people said this before me. I'm not the first, but this is theoretically is going to be an election that's held about populism, and so. If it's Trump, he's running a right-wing populist campaign, which it still might be Trump. It's a long time to go. But like, again, the question comes, can Hillary Clinton run a believable populist campaign? I don't think she necessarily can. And so in a year that I think populism is probably something that would actually really, I think the candidate who wins is going to be who's probably more populist. Democrats would be well served to actually get someone who can be is a legitimate populist, and not someone who has such a long history of being a corporatist.
And that I don't know if Hillary Clinton would be able to win against Trump because of that issue of the populist uprisings that are happening. But I do think she would appear more populist than, say, a Bush or a Ben Carson.
Right.
It's interesting because, before I became a comedian and a pundit and a professor, I was a psychotherapist, right? And so a lot of times in psychotherapy, you talk about what is your motivation? What's the motivating factor here? Are you motivated by fear? Are you taking actions out of fear? Or are you taking actions out of creativity, love, building something, right? And so the idea is sanity comes from being able to take actions out of like the creative impulse. And this is softer than our normal political talk, but that creative impulse and building something and making new things and supporting each other. That creative impulse is, what they call in this therapy circles, a love impulse versus a fear impulse. And I feel that Donald Trump is running on the activation of that fear impulse, and Bernie Sanders is running on the activation of that sort of love, creativity impulse. I know that's not going to make me very popular. I hope I don't. I mean, I'll check my Twitter feed after this comes out, but it's a lot easier to activate someone's fear brain, their flight or fight response, than it is to activate people's, let's all get together and fix this economy, and let's all get together and share things, and in a spirit of brotherly love that the Pope was talking about. That's a much heavier lift, especially given the current talk radio climate and talk television climate that really instigates that hate instinct. And personally, with what's happening with all the gun violence and all these sort of young, angry people coming out of the woodwork and gunning down innocent Americans, I do believe that an atmosphere of hateful speech and hateful thought contributes to those hateful actions. All of this starts, every action starts in thought. That's the theory these days, is psychotherapy. So if we're thinking hate, we're going to get hate as an outcome. So I really do see sort of a Bernie Sanders versus a Trump thing, those two populist impulses being, they fall squarely in those categories of psychotherapy that, no one's really talking about.